Hello, dear hearts. Greetings on the eve of this full moon in Virgo, which is going to peak on the 24th of February 2024 at 2:30 p.m. Athens, Greece time. Now, do indeed check that out depending on where you are on this earth, but there will be very strong full moon energy in Virgo on the 23rd of February, the 24th of February, and the 25th of February, particularly on the 24th being the centerpiece of the energy and the peak point of the energy. The black moon in Lilith is going to be making a very intimate stride around this particular full moon, and she's in Virgo. She's in Virgo, so her transit in Virgo has been that of a directly infuriated one when we look at world matters linked to health, the earth, the elements, agriculture. I mean, everything that's taking place with the farmers and the demonstrations on a worldwide level, wherein they're sad because they're not getting what they're rightfully worth. All of this is an expression of that very deeply hidden pain and suffering, which is now coming to the surface around the Lilith in Virgo theme. And Lilith in Virgo, when we look at her, we are talking again about the body, about our health, about agriculture, about land, nature, the elements, and how it expresses itself through Gaia, through Mother Earth. So crops, produce, everything that we're harvesting. It's also very much about the elements and how they work together, the right kind of harmony, how they are contributing, how they are making sure that we have access to that correct kind of nutritious side, to that Virgoan very generous giving presence. Yes, which is challenged, again, as I had mentioned, through this Lilith in Virgo transit. And what happens is she comes to the surface, so that accumulated suppression of suffering in areas that have not been healed and dealt with on a collective level, since this is a collective message when we're talking about the way it's impacting the whole, not just the individual. What happens is her transit through Virgo and any of the star signs, it brings out the theme of what that transit represents through all the different messages coming through all the planetary bodies as well in that timeline that will be affecting or connecting in many ways with the particular theme of Lilith's movement. So in Virgo right now, it's a heightened position with this very full moon. It's a heightened position because you'll be able to see where the imbalances are, where that collective rage and suffering and anguish is, where the abuse of the sacred feminine as the giver of life, as the giver of sustenance, nutrients, all that abundance and the harvest that we all need at the end of the day, that we need to be able to enjoy year in and year out. And as I said, with the whole agricultural situation, you've seen all the protests worldwide, the uprise there, the uproar, and that is completely predictable with Lilith and Virgo. But let's go even more so now, into the theme, because we are at that somewhat midway point with the Lilith in Virgo transit. She will be continuing on until the middle of this year, with the last shadow point in the early stages of July. So from now until then, and mind you, she's been doing this since October in Virgo, since October 2023. So, we're not only talking about how unnerving it is to see nature struggling, to see people also working very hard and not being rewarded for their efforts, but we're also now talking about the elimination, the actual elimination of nature. If we're looking at the full moon's message collectively combine with Lilith in Virgo, which is at a very clear center peak point, in opposition to, of course, Saturn and the solar energy naturally being entering the early points of Pisces now. And then we have the remaining planets that are also in Pisces. But again, focusing on Saturn's tough teaching, tough scolding to that lesson that needs to be learnt collectively. Lilith is saying, this is wrong, we are now in trouble. We are destroying nature. We are eliminating nature. We are, in fact, turning to things that are away from nature, that aren't part of the natural law, that aren't part of nature's order and symphony, which is that divine chaos that allows for some kind of incredible harmony that is supporting us in the most purest and sincerest ways, that is supporting our frequency, every part of our being, what is hidden and obvious about us, right down to the bone marrow, absolutely everything in our being. So when that is being eliminated, when the outer functional, which is a wonderful complement to the inner way we function, when that outer component is being completely kind of eliminated, you can understand how unnatural we're going to feel, how disconnected we're going to feel from authenticity, from being able to access our authenticity, from being able to feel connected, in a state of peace and calm, quite frankly. When you look at trees swaying, they're very well rooted, right? So they sway, they go through all the seasons, but they're very well rooted. Nothing is uprooting them. They know where they stand. They have their place. They have their being well rooted. And therefore, they're not at all going to be uncomfortable with whatever's taking place. The right kind of relationship to the natural law is a bit like that. You have to know where you are, right? So in many ways, evolution is evolution, whether destructive or divine, whether a bit of both. We have to also be aware, very clearly aware, of how the state of affairs are also impacting everything, and our unique experience in that tapestry, because then we can make more sense of it. We can make more sense of the mood swings. We can make more sense of the discomforts. We can make more sense of things just not feeling clear. The mercurial force behind Virgo in this full moon, and I am going to talk a lot about this because it's a very important full moon. It is holding so many secret messages for the masses, and it wants us to be aware of its presence and its ability to help us, because there is strong teaching coming through this particular February full moon 2024. And it stems from, Saturn is now in opposition. So Saturn is saying, you're having a cry, you're very upset about the world affairs, you're not okay with the destructive tendency right now that's happening, where nature is being eliminated, where we are being taken away from what's rooted us for thousands and thousands of years. The types of shifts that are happening, we have not seen. It's not something that we say we've actually already been, accustomed to, or we understand. It is a new, inception into this reality. So imagine for thousands of years, we're collectively all kind of happening at a certain frequency and rhythm. And then suddenly there's this whole other kind of energetic integration that is totally different to what we know, to what we are most familiar and suited to. Saturn is saying, it's uncomfortable, Lilith. Saturn is talking to Lilith and saying it's uncomfortable, but we as the masses now are going to have to learn in a hard way. We're going to have to be disciplined in ways that are very tough. So we can imagine Saturn has a whip and is whipping us to figure out the right order, the right structure. Now, whether that means all this uprise and all this kind of cry for help, coming from a need to have more respect for the workers who protect and preserve nature, more respect for nature itself, understanding that actually, well, we are still human beings, so we do still need to eat and drink clean water, right? And have good, wholesome, nutritious food that's full of nutrients. We don't want to deplete our resources. We don't want to mass produce in ways that destroy our world's oceans and rivers and so on. We don't want to be, fabricating things, which we already are, falsely, in factories, in labs, creating all sorts of types of new, forms of nutrients that are man-made, that aren't coming from and stemming from that healthy soil, that is, of course, what has been very kind and generous for a very long time on this planet to us. So Saturn is creating a tough talk, with the dialogue of Lilith and the world, because Lilith is really quick. She's the patron of Mother Earth. She's a protector of Mother Earth. Very misunderstood, but she's not able to accept those imbalances. So she fights to put order where there is a lot of negativity and suppressed pain, rage, difficulty, trauma, and so on, personally and definitely in this case collectively. So her role now with the moon is we're going to see on a worldly level where these big disruptions are, where these big degrees of abuse are. And again, they're all about how nature is being impacted, agriculture, food, produce, how we're relating to that too as a consumer, as someone who generally buys stuff from the supermarket, and, our rights around that. Are we really getting what we buy? Are we really supposed to be, paying all that money for things that in truth, it should cost less if we're getting it from around the corner, right? Why are we getting a cheaper deal buying something that's coming from thousands and thousands of miles away? This type of thing. Why is everything so wrong? So in many ways, it's making a mockery. It's making a mockery of what we think should be done. So again, if we want to buy something from around the corner, why are supermarkets and leading supermarkets or organizations making people pay more money for something that's locally produced and not encouraging that, and then bringing us things from far, far away that cost 10 times less, which is actually really silly. And even if we look at authentic organic produce, why does that cost more? It shouldn't. All those chemicals and rubbish and mass production actually generally cost a lot more money, don't they? Why are we paying less, when we could be very much, encouraging as a world, as a whole, this incredible ability to have just fresh, wonderful, clean, correct food, and in a fair way that's being encouraged, that is less, so we can afford it, so we can encourage it, so we can get back to local and seasonal production and things like that. These are just some expressions. I'm taking them off my chest so we can get a bit of a glimpse, but I am going to go into the astrological jargon and really talk to you about everything that's happening. But this is how we're starting the talk, because you need to feel the urgency of the times and our unique relationship, okay, to all of these major factors. On a personal level, because we all need a personal message, Saturn is going to make it hard and has been making it hard in Pisces, because it's that last point with the 12 main star signs. It's that final point of teaching where it carries all the teachings of all the other star signs. So Saturn in Pisces wants people to show up for their own wrongs, their own errors, and it will force us into compassion like no other before, actually. And that's why if we're lacking the empathy that's required at this juncture on a worldwide level, if we're lacking the empathy to be connected to circumstances from a place that is actually dignified enough to see that serving the self is a very, recent issue. It's not something that had been there in past times, because for thousands of years it wasn't about self-serving at all. This is a very recent phenomena. It was about how to live with others, how to serve as a community, as a collective. Everything you would do would impact other and vice versa. And this was a known truth. It wasn't something that we were evading from. But the recent times, they created this very strong illusion of the self being, forced into some kind of idea that we can survive without anything else. But it's totally a trap. It's not sincere at all, because we cannot survive without anything else. In fact, we're always dependent on many other factors all the time. Even if we are going to work and making our own money and living in our own home and not reporting to anybody and make our own rules in our life and do what we want, we're still constantly in need of other, because there's so many other factors. Whether you have an intimate relationship to those factors or not, it doesn't matter, but they are contributing to your illusion of a freedom or an independence, in better words, which is still a lie. You got to understand this. And the people that we're buying things from, the ones who are making sure we get our electricity working, and the food, all these people in the farms that do all the hard work that aren't getting paid for what they do, they're all contributing to our fake so-called independence, freedom. So these pop-up houses that we're, building and jumping in and having that so-called life that looks like it is, well, what society is expecting, and it seems like it's what we're supposed to be doing. Still, even if you get the formula right and you have the house, you have the family, you have the children, you're still subject to many other factors and influences. So it's wonderful, right, when we have what we need. But Saturn, with this astrological situation that's going on, is going to also make us remember others. Not just the people that are in our home, not just our kids, not just the house we live in, the pets we care for. It's going to make us really think of others, people that are quite distant, seemingly distant to us. For example, the people that are dying every day in Gaza. Just an example, okay? Many of us, we don't know these people. We've never seen them. We've never had a relationship to them. We've never spoken with them. We don't even know about them, so to speak. We just know that there are people in Gaza. But currently they're being killed every day. There's a war going on, just like we were having all these other wars in the last few years. So even though we have no direct relationship, the majority of us, to these people who are dying, there are people who are being killed. There are people who are dying, right? And we're being told this every day, that there's a war. There are wars going on, simultaneous wars. There are other wars that aren't being covered as much online or on TV. But currently there are many. So the example here is, it's a very serious and sincere example, is that all of what's taking place, right, with Saturn in the sky, in opposition to the current planets, key planets, it's basically telling us that, we have to think that we, whether or not we are aware of it, are actually connected to all those people who are dying. We are linked to them. We aren't separate. We aren't distant. We aren't in our own free little speck of land or world away from that. That's deception. That's a lie. We are actually connected. We're connected because everything we all do in this globe, right, is somehow affecting, impacting another. Everything we do, say, think, that's the main thing. And it does. And what's happening there is also going to impact us. You understand? And what we do in our pocket is going to impact there. Now, it doesn't mean that we call the shots and we're creating those deaths. But we are definitely linked and connected to the people who are dying, to the people who are creating the wars. So Saturn is in a very upset kind of hold of the planetary situation and is saying to Lilith, yes, you really want to save the earth. You in Virgo are now going to show us how valuable the earth is. This is what Saturn is saying to Lilith in Virgo. You're going to show us how valuable the earth is. You know, you're going to show us what she's made of too, you know. Because when the earth is suffering, all these wars, they cannot fight against the wrath of this land we are from, that we, you know, have been calling home for so long. So he's also saying to Lilith, you're going to show us what you're also capable of, how you can protect and defend this earth, nature, the natural law and order through the natural circumference. Then, at the same time, Saturn is saying, I am also going to show all these beings that lacking empathy is the main contributor to the misery of the states of the times. And that is going to become an ongoing problem, wherein the more we escape, the more we deny the power of empathy, the more we pretend it doesn't exist or we cannot experience it, because empathy also makes us feel pain at times, right? Not our own, but circumstantial. The more we turn away from that, the harder it's going to be for those who do this. The more of us that embrace doesn't mean we can go and like save people in Gaza, right? Or wherever they're suffering physically. Like we can't all do that. We're not all doctors without borders that can do that, right? But at the very least, the fact that we connect with that pain, that we connect with the collective circumstance, that we're aware of our unique contribution to the whole and are not blocking it out and not living in some kind of deceit and denial that we actually don't have any link to anything other than what we're doing for our own lives, right? So the more we are true and understand our unique connection and link to the whole and show up for that with so much consideration, even if it means that, you know, we light a candle every day for the next 10 days in sincere wishes, you know, for peace and true, you know, freedom for all those people that are dying at the expense of our lives, you know. If we, you know, just let it in our hearts, our being. If we hear bad news, be aware of it, you know, and automatically we can change what we perceive as bad news through our wish, through our intention, through our care, through our concern, through our empathy, through our connection, right? Speaking of which, water is a very big topic with Saturn and what Saturn's doing with this full moon. You know, water, I've been saying this to friends, and I know that you're listening and you'll remember my words. I was saying this 7 years ago, you know, looking at Saturn entering Pisces, and I know all of you will be like, yes, I remember, the ones who remember. It's going to actually be very tough with water on a worldwide level, and especially what I had mentioned back then, when Neptune shifts from Pisces, finally, you know, gets firm into Aries. That's it. That's when we're going to really see the devastation around the abuse of water. So water restrictions will be taking a whole other degree, you know, of I guess worldwide concern. And I don't know if you know this, but you know, Saturn in Pisces is going to make it very tough around water. And our waters, our worldwide waters, the oceans, drinking water, bodies of water. So I want us all to be very aware of how we can contribute to creating new, very clean and efficient forms of water supply for your own communities, how we can heal and help water. But it's always good to start in your own community, your own environment, to be a part of making sure that the water supply where you're linked to is protected and taken care of. You know, there's places maybe nearby some of your homes that it wouldn't be a bad idea to go and just clean up the riverbanks, you know, remove all the rubbish and so on. Or if you're part of very small communities, it's easy to set laws and rules that are going to give people more of a sense of authority in their own connection and contribution. Because if people are polluting their own waterways, right, then they're going to not have water. It's very simple. And this is unfortunately already happening. There's an abuse of water. There has been in many places on Earth. But if you can see in Europe, there's really big issues in places like Spain that have been going through all sorts of drought. They have water restrictions at a very extreme level. The greenery is just not green anymore in so many places, especially near the bigger cities. And that's just one example, but there are many others worldwide, Even in Greece, one summer on some of the islands, they didn't have water in certain places for months. So you couldn't use government water for months. So, that really was tough. I mean, these are, again, just examples, but you can look into it yourself, do your own research and see. So anyhow, when Neptune does shift around 2026, it really gets stable into Aries, and Saturn is obviously, going to be in Pisces and creating all sorts of now, challenges around our relationship to water. It is important that we are aware of it and do more to protect and care for it, and, support natural bodies of water and getting refills done where you refill, your own, glass jugs or what have you, instead of all this plastic bottle consumption, and being more concerned about filtered water, protecting your water, your local environment, and how it relates to water as well. And if you can create better ways to have water accessible for you in your home, whether you have a well, whether you have a situation where you're working through solar power and rainwater, whatever's going on there for you in your home and dimension, really do give your time and care to this subject of the protection of water. So anyhow, so this is also why, the teachings on empathy through Saturn and caring and being concerned about, respecting our certain relationship to these key elements that are a key function of our realm, even though there are major things trying to get in there energetically and create a whole new reality for the human species. Still, it's not coming at the speed that it would like to, because the natural law and the natural way is a very ancient truth. So it's almost like a war of its own. And this is why the Pluto Aquarius message, which is its own dialogue, which I will be going into independently, and I haven't finished that yet, it's very long, and that's for the next 20 years, and that is really going to talk about the human condition, because it's a major collective message, it's a major collective influence. But just a glimpse so you can understand with this full moon, we are still fortunate enough to protect and care for the natural way. We are not being forced in an obvious format to abandon it. And we can have our own gardens, we can have our own vegetation, we can care for the water in our homes, we can think about community living, we can think about these very bare necessities. Remember, with the last ecliptic season access of the Taurine Scorpio energy, now definitely shifting and very well stabilized in the ecliptic energy of Aries and Libra Aries, we go to this 0 point. And the lunar nodes on the 0 point, again, coming back to this full moon, tell us that we now with this full moon can really kind of understand the meaning and the value of all these lessons leading up until this point now, collectively. We've been made to shed a lot of skin, go through a lot of transformation to make us more humble, in many ways more aware, right, to our collective contribution, to our relationship to the whole. Again, the COVID phenomena and all that happened was that big example of the interlinked component, and how we all witnessed something happening worldwide together. We were all eyes to the same ordeal. So after that, the world's become even smaller. And even though many of us haven't found our roots, after that big process, this full moon is really shining down on us, showing us where the meaning is for us, where the value is for us, what means something to us, what do we want to protect and preserve, what do we want to care for, what do we want to be from here on in for ourselves and others. How are we going to take care of our body, take care of our weight, not just literal weight in terms of the impact we make. Is that going to be positive? Is that going to be more inclined to just the junk and the muck, or are we going to, again, create the right weighty impact that supports and helps, benefits, So all of these things are going to get more and more clear around this full moon. So dear ones, there is also an aspect with Jupiter, Venus, and then soon after Mars will be aspecting Jupiter in a peculiar way, which will bring a grandiose effect to the needs and wants of what we desire. And when we look at desire with these aspects, with Venus, Mars, and Jupiter, we are talking about the out of this world needs versus what sustains us as human beings on this earth. And it's a tricky thing to go into just through basic language, because there's always going to be, as I've always said, exalted, beneficial results, balanced results, and then the degenerate, underprivileged side, tough side to all the astrological influences. Of course, some are always sitting on the very beneficial benefactor point, and then there are others that have that tinge of, difficulty, hardship, and we obtain the information to better navigate, to be able to understand how to govern the times. But we are constantly affected by the elements, constantly affected by the planetary bodies, primarily the solar energy and lunar energy, and so much else. Now, the lunar nodes and the ecliptic season potency, which is now, we're entering that ecliptic season. We're already getting affected, losing our patience. Things are, heating up within our being because we're drawing near. We're about a month away from the first eclipse of this eclipse season. We're also at the last walk of the dying part of the year. So we have a month into, yes, that's it, just 1 month, and that's it. We then have the astrological new year, which we then depart from the whole, portion of the dying part of the year, which is always taking place from the end of October until the equinox at March. So big endings in terms of lessons in this last month, February, end of February through to the end of March is going to be not just a personal experience of shedding and clearing away so much, but also on a collective level. You will see it. You will see it and live it and breathe it. In fact, because of the astrological energies and messages such as Saturn in Pisces and the Pisces opposition to this full moon, and how Lilith is being opposed by all of what's taking place in Pisces, it again forces us into an empathic state. We cannot avoid what's going on with everybody else. We cannot avoid what's happening everywhere else. We cannot serve the eye in the way we used to. It's just no longer possible. And, Neptune in Pisces is, of course, going to be ushering the final teaching before that grand shift into Aries, which has been in many ways a spiritual depth that we all needed throughout all of Neptune's time in Pisces. But on the same coin, the other side, the flip side, is a lot of addictions and strange relationships to a more illusory state through the wrong kind of patterns and habits have been very much exposed in many of us. So transforming that and reaching to a more, altruistic, more enlightened degree of a wish or a direction. And when the Neptunian energy gets stronger and exalted, even though at home in Pisces, and very complementary to be at home in Pisces, when it does get strengthened and exalted, it can be uncompromising in the way that it communicates what is needed. It can be very encompassing too, it can completely smother the collective and the individual in its teachings. And if you think of the water element, again, very strongly linked to Neptune, of course, when water embraces you, it does. It's like a flood, you can't exactly do much. It can really take over. And that, whether it's beneficial or not, depends on the level of teaching and lesson that is getting, put on us. And this is why, with all this, Piscean opposition to Lilith, Neptune being there too, the triggers that come up in her transit until the middle of the year, very much seen with this full moon, what triggers us, right? All these triggers that come up, these are actually very deep habits that are being addressed. They're not habits that are newly found or on a very basic, superficial level. So ultimately, we want to get rid of habits that are not serving us, habits in general, anything that is creating a stubborn, kind of effect in the way our consciousness behaves. To be free of those unnecessary patterns, tendencies, is part of what Lilith can do with the Piscean opposition. But because it's Saturn, because we have Neptune doing what Neptune's doing, because, the solar energy is going to be very, very strong in Pisces, this Pisces season, it will, again, have a smothering effect where, we can't really escape from what the teachings are. This next month is wanting us to learn, and because of the eclipses, the high degree of intensity will always create a feeling of being, I guess, when you're really kind of boiling within, or, drowning, in circumstances that you have to deal with, that you have to overcome, that you have to confront, that you have to face. And this is a very personal message. And this full moon is supporting you to face it. Virgo wants details. Virgo wants you to get that pen and paper and write everything out. What is happening with you? What is going on? Get it all out of your mind and write it out, map it out. Virgo loves the structure, loves things to be organized. Explain things to yourself. See what's taking place, where you're going off the rails, and then explain things to yourself as to why you think that's happening. Why are you going off the rails? Where are you going off the rails? Perfect example. Piscean energy, if it didn't have Saturn there right now, we would all be a bit kind of, I guess, lost in some dreamland to escape our everyday responsibilities and our current, earthly domain of reality. But because Saturn is there, well, the teaching is also saying, what's a real worthwhile dream to have, and what isn't? We create all sorts of distractions. We create all sorts of dreams. We create all sorts of ideas, what ifs, potentials, possibilities that generally cover up things in our being that we just don't have the guts to face because it's painful. It's painful to face the truth of all, the truth of reality, the truth of this existence. For example, I guess this is a story worth telling. So one of these days, not too long ago, I was in a city. I went to get myself in the evening time before getting public transport back to where I was staying. I went to get myself, I think it was a black sesame, soy milk drink. I love black sesame. But anyhow, it had some hot soy milk mixed with it. So I ordered myself that. And I then asked for a glass of water. Because, generally tap water, you can have it given to you, right? With your hot drinks. Just a glass of water. I felt so thirsty. And the people there told me no. The staff, they said no. I said, no, hold on a second. I said, you just can't give me a glass of water from the tap? And they said, no, you have to buy food if you want us to give you a glass of water from the tap. I said, really? I said, but I just got this hot drink, Is it all right? Just one glass of water? And they said, no. If you want it, you have to eat food, or you can buy a glass of water. You can buy like a bottled water. And I said, well, I don't want to buy the bottled water. I don't want to buy the plastic bottled water right now. I just want a little bit of water in a glass. And lacking empathy, completely disconnected, they were very persistent and stubborn in saying no. And for some reason, my thirst grew upon me even more so. So I didn't feel like I could walk away and accept that situation. And I very politely said to them, look, I said, I don't feel like I'm going to be able to walk away from here for two reasons. One, if I was your mother, would you give me a glass of water? And two, that water from the tap, that's not your water. That's not anyone's water. That's our water. It's for us, all of us. And why are you stopping me from having some of that water that's going to help me, make me feel good? Why are you stopping that? It doesn't belong to anyone. It's ours, all of ours. So then one of the two people said, okay, what do you want? And I said, just a glass of water. So they gave it to me, a glass of water. I said, thank you. I said, thank you very, very much. I said, thank you, really. So that situation, as I quenched my thirst, had me crying. Like I was very emotional after that, very upset. Because, you ask nicely, you're very polite, you're very kind, you connect from your heart, but you look at people and they don't, some people, not all people, they don't understand. They're too distracted by the stress of the times, big city life, the mechanism, of, well, we're not supposed to do that. Or no, actually, that's not what we're meant to do. Or this is the rule, so, we cannot break it. That mechanism, but the human decency in that, where is it? Where is just the utter respect, to your fellow human beings? In India, everywhere you go, they give you water. And India has problems with water. There are so many people that lack water. And at the same time, an overpopulated country like India, if they have water, even in the poorest place, they're going to give you water as a guest in that village. They will give you their last drop of water, even if they have none left for their own home and selves. I'm just giving you an example. In many parts, in the cultures I'm linked to in Europe and so on and so forth, every time you order a drink, they give you a glass of water. Okay? So there are, unfortunately now, new rules, as what I've understood, because I did a lot of research and looked into it after that experience that was quite sad, that you're not allowed to have access to water like you used to. Some places refuse to give it to you. And even in the pubs, I heard too, you can't just keep asking for tap water with ice. They're even starting to change that. Even if you're unfortunately dehydrated or something because you're drinking a lot or something, they still refuse to give you water. So there's been a lot of things I've researched and looked into. And so, water, think of it as a meeting place in this astrological overview and the worldwide message astrologically. Think of it as a meeting place. Giving water to someone, having water to give, is one of the most kindest things you can do. In fact, having clean water, purified water to offer your guests in your home, isn't that so important? You wouldn't want them to come and drink contaminated water, right? So think of it as a meeting place. Think of the elements, all the elements, as a meeting place. Fire, water, air, earth, and the space which holds it all together as a meeting place. It brings us all together. It's that unified point. We come together with food. We come together through drink. We come together thanks to the air we breathe, to the space which holds it all and makes it possible. You know, so much fire goes into the food we eat. Water, earth, and air is needed to digest. It's needed to survive. It's needed to converse, to connect. So as a meeting point, see it as a meeting point. And it is so sacred. And it has been sacred forever, since we can look back, as far as we can look back. So, yeah, I feel like that little story I told you, you know, it's an example. I did feel that the people I was talking to, they were, I guess, reflecting, contemplating on what I had said, but it was very difficult to get them out of that mechanical kind of, the robotics of the times, you know, when you're really stressed, you're under pressure, and you're just responding without awareness because you have that almost like sleep mode, you know, on, and you just, you know, you don't really reflect on the situation you're facing. In fact, you don't see a human being in front of you. We're so involved in digital platforms and online virtual realities and plugged into things that are not at all linked to the moment we're living, the now, you know, what's around us, the birds chirping, the air we're breathing. We're elsewhere because of not just our mind and our thoughts, but the way that technology distracts us and drives us when not used correctly, right? So that then continues to force us into a non-human state if we're not careful, which then creates things like murder, killings being very easy at the blink of an eye. Someone might just kill someone because they don't have a connection to that authenticity anymore. They become so disconnected, taken away from their truth, from their authentic presence, from the rhythm within. You know, if people are doing it online, if it all seems so normal, then let's just normalize it. That killing becomes like something just, you know, normal. And that's wrong, isn't it? That's the big era of this time. And I always like to talk about the dark points, the difficult points in astrology, because if we're aware of those first, getting to the exalted points, the greatest experience of the astrological influences becomes very easy. Yeah, that's why, you know, Pluto in Aquarius will have its great points, great advances in technology and in very futuristic pursuits that could help and support also the human condition and being human. But at the exact same time, Pluto in Aquarius can also bring about all sorts of attempts and difficulties around technology that attempt to actually destroy and completely eliminate nature. And nature starts from within. Nature starts from our heart. You know, how many times in one day do you people, all of you, let's say, who are listening to this, to all of us, go to our hearts. Be aware of our hearts. Literally put our mind to our heart. So where is our heart? Okay. What is our heart going through right now? What's happening in our heart? Because the mind is just spinning, going through so many things all the time. And then we have to bring it to our heart. If we can do that constantly every day, we can be more truthful with ourselves. We can be more honest with ourselves. Honesty, which is another big teaching of this full moon. It's about authenticity coming from being honest with oneself, being honest with our situations, our circumstances, our limitations, and boundaries have always been really important. But when the planets get all kind of tough like the way they are at the moment, it's very difficult to have boundaries. It'll be very difficult to block out things that come stampeding in to our lives that need us, that want us, that require our help, right? Or some kind of recognition, respect. This includes not just our intimate circumstances, but the world as a whole, and what's happening everywhere, far and wide. I was talking to a dear friend the other day, and I said, dear friend and teacher, I must say, respectfully. And I said, I've been watching these courts on telly, on TV, discussing, international affairs here. I just thought I'd have a look, right? The war in Gaza, and, going on and on for weeks, in fact, about, what they think should happen in the war in Gaza. And I was telling my friend, why is this acceptable? Why are we sitting down in front of our tellies, watching people that are making billions of dollars a month talk about the war and discuss it instead of it not happen or it be stopped? It's one of the most obvious mockeries of our own ignorance, right? It's like there's something saying, ha, we're all so ignorant, see? And we're even seeing this, that's what's taking place. And we can't even say, well, isn't that ridiculous, And to be honest, examples like that are enough for us to not want to be a part of cyclic suffering, to be a part of exactly, the core disgrace that kind of makes us all fall into very negative states of being. I mean, honestly, it's a very clear example, we could just reflect on that a bit, because the fact that that's even happening and we go on with our lives and I guess don't have the time to stop and say, well, hold on a minute. Those people, they're making billions of dollars a day and they're talking about the international affairs around murder happening on a worldwide level in many different places where technically actually, that should not be happening at all. Why do we need to discuss this? People should not be murdered. People should not be killed. Innocent people shouldn't be murdered for the sake of other people's billions. I mean, isn't that just enough to say, well, this is a ridiculous world we live in, isn't it? So, there is some kind of force for sure taking advantage of everybody's innocence. That's true. But we also now can be so clever and connect with our hearts and seek out true things, not fall for the lie, the deceit, all the things that are caging us up in very false dimensions. We are so capable. In fact, that's one of the main things here, thanks to Saturn and to this full moon and what Lilith is doing as well in her own very powerful way. It's like, okay, you'll feel it with Jupiter's aspects, with Venus and Mars too. I believe they'll be, saying hello to Jupiter in an aggressive way. So with all this going on and then approaching the eclipse season, you can see it's a very powerful time. The teaching too with all this, is, well, actually, we can be very conscious. We actually can be very aware. We actually can be our own masters. We can be our own true leaders. We can be our own truth. We can really reconnect to that, and all that enslaved pushing and pulling and all the infinite things that manipulate influence, do all sorts of stuff to our everyday, actually can also dissolve. And that's why we're going to get flooded by Saturn. We're going to be confronted by Lilith. We're going to be put under the light of this full moon to find out again, even if it takes a while, what really means something to us, what we are fighting for deep down, what we really want to protect and preserve. And through all of these, worldwide situations and personal challenges and discoveries, there will be a great ability that I think like no other before, because these times are super rare. We're going through a generational shift, of course. Everyone talks about that, but we're also going through the ages, actually shifting. So really going into what is the Iron Age on a relative level. And that Iron Age, Kali Yuga, it's also very available for instant awakening, instant freedom from what binds us, because the yuck and the muck is just so obvious. Like I was just saying regarding what I was telling a friend. Yeah, it's just so obvious. And therefore the yearning for something true, the yearning for help, the yearning to be free from pain, from misery, from hardship, from problems, from all those you care about, to be free of it too, it's just more available. You won't be able to escape being almost checkmated into that state of complete empathy that really wants what's needed to be really okay. So I'm impressed. I find it all very helpful. I mean, personally, I find it all very helpful. The astrological influences, they're not easy though, because there's a constant surrendering, especially when they gang up on us like this. But we're not anymore, I think, afraid. I think an element of losing a lot of fear these last 5 or so years has been very important to all the truth-seeking quests out there. And this full moon is giving us many, many blessings, many blessings. So that's why we should connect with her, be very aware of her, and enjoy, I think, all that nourishment, all that beauty that can come from being under her light. Whether you can see her or not in the sky, it doesn't matter. But having that feeling of communion. And it's a very auspicious full moon. It comes with many blessings for all of us. So we need to do a lot of good acts, do a lot of good things, a lot of virtuous activity on such a moon to bring out the best of its abilities. And having had listened to all of this, all of you, that again is all about just knowing the harder points and understanding where we're heading collectively. The grace of it all, the best of it all, is that you can have so much to look forward to if you address these tougher points to the aspects. Then you'll have so much to look forward to, because you'll be more able to navigate and have a clearer peace in your role, in your unique contribution. Thank you so much, dear hearts. May all be auspicious. Happy full moon. And please feel free to communicate if there's anything you'd like to share. I'm going to be really with my heads down and thumbs up. So enjoy that, as all your dear requests also get answered. All my love. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.